What if everything you thought you knew about history was just the surface level, the official story written by the victors? Beneath the grand narratives of kings and empires, there's a hidden world of shadowy alliances, coded messages, and secret societies that have quietly shaped the course of human events. These groups operated in the darkness, their influence felt but rarely seen, their members bound by oaths so sacred that breaking them could mean death. Think of the Freemasons or the Illuminati, names that spark instant recognition. But what about the others, the ones history books gloss over or ignore entirely? Picture this, a candlelit room deep beneath an ancient city, where figures draped in hooded robes whisper plans that could topple kingdoms. Or a forgotten manuscript, its pages filled with symbols no outsider can decipher, revealing the existence of a society so secret even its name has been erased from record. These aren't just scenes from a thriller, they're glimpses into real groups that once wielded immense power, only to vanish into the shadows, leaving behind faint traces for us to piece together. Some were founded to protect forbidden knowledge, others to challenge oppressive rulers, and a few, well, their true purposes remain a mystery even today. That's where we're headed. Over the next 25 revelations, we'll pull back the curtain on societies you've likely never heard of, groups that manipulated wars, controlled empires, and guarded secrets so explosive their very existence was denied. From medieval guilds with sinister sidelines to underground networks that defied entire regimes, these are the stories that didn't make it into your textbooks. And here's the twist, some of these societies might still exist, operating in plain sight, their symbols hidden in architecture, their rituals disguised as tradition. Ready to uncover the truth? Let's begin. Among the countless secret societies that flourished in the shadows of history, few were as delightfully bizarre as the Order of the Pug. Born in 18th century Germany as an offshoot of Freemasonry, this group had one radical twist: it welcomed women at a time when most fraternal orders barred them entirely. But their openness wasn't the only thing that set them apart. The Pugs, as members called themselves, adopted an unlikely mascot, the pug dog, a symbol of unwavering loyalty and trust. Imagine walking into an initiation ceremony where new recruits, wearing literal dog collars, had to scratch at the door 3 times to gain entry, mimicking their canine counterparts. Once inside, they were expected to bark on command and even learn a secret pug language to prove their dedication. Why the absurd theatrics? Beneath the playful rituals lay a sharp critique of Enlightenment-era hypocrisy. While intellectuals preached reason and equality, most secret societies still excluded women. The Order of the Pug turned that contradiction into satire, using humor to challenge the status quo. Their meetings were part social club, part rebellion, a space where women and men could discuss philosophy and politics as equals, all under the guise of a dog-worshipping cult. The pug itself was a clever jab, a small, unthreatening creature that, much like the society's members, was often underestimated. Yet by adopting its image, they showed how loyalty and cleverness could quietly dismantle barriers. But don't let the whimsy fool you. The Pugs were serious about secrecy. Members received intricate medals featuring their pug emblem, and betrayal was met with swift expulsion, sometimes even public mockery. Their legacy, though short-lived, whispers a fascinating truth. Sometimes the most subversive acts come disguised as jokes, and who's to say their spirit doesn't linger? Next time you see a pug's wrinkled face staring from a centuries-old painting, you might just be looking at a hidden nod to history's most unconventional secret society. While the Order of the Pug used humor to challenge society, other secret groups wielded far deadlier tools in their fight for change. Enter the Carbonari, Italy's shadowy revolutionary army that turned charcoal burners' huts into war rooms and biblical scriptures into encrypted battle plans. Active in the early 1800s, this network of nationalist agitators didn't just dream of a unified Italy. they lit the fuse that would eventually blow the old order apart. Disguised as humble charcoal merchants, Carbonari literally means charcoal burners. Members operated in plain sight, using their trade as cover to move undetected across borders. But beneath their soot-stained clothes, they carried knives, smuggled weapons, and memorized secret initiation rites involving cryptic handshakes and blood oaths. New recruits were blindfolded and led into forest clearings where they'd pledge allegiance to vendetta against tyranny, their daggers pointed at a mock altar symbolizing oppression. The stakes were lethal. Betrayal meant execution, often by the traitor's own family within the society, their most ingenious trick hiding subversive messages in hollowed-out Bibles. To outsiders, these looked like ordinary religious texts, but pry open the spine, and you'd find maps of Austrian troop movements or assassination targets. The Carbonari's reach was staggering. Giuseppe Garibaldi, the legendary revolutionary, was among their ranks, and their blueprints for underground cells later inspired revolutionaries from Russia to Latin America. Yet for all their influence, the Carbonari's greatest weapon was symbolism. They turned charcoal, the residue of fire, into a metaphor for rebirth, proving even ashes could ignite change. When Italy finally unified in 1861, their once secret handshakes became the silent language of a liberated nation. In the heart of West Africa, where the red earth meets dense forests, a secret society once held power so absolute that even kings trembled before their judgment. The Ogboni, a Yoruba judicial cult dating back centuries, weren't just arbiters of justice. They were the living embodiment of the land itself, wielding authority through sacred bronze figures and rituals steeped in primal symbolism. Unlike European secret societies that operated in shadowy lodges, the Ogboni conducted their ceremonies in the open. Their power derived from something far more ancient, the very soil beneath their feet. At the center of their practice stood the Eden bronze staffs topped with grotesque, twin-faced figures bound together by chains. These weren't mere artifacts, they were conduits to the spirit world, believed to scream when held by liars during trials. Imagine a courtroom where the accused gripped the Eden while swearing oaths, their fate depending on whether the metal remained silent or erupted in supernatural protest. The Ogboni's trials were theatrical yet deadly serious, blending theater with divine retribution. Even kings weren't exempt. If a ruler grew corrupt, the Ogboni could strip him of his crown or worse. Their meetings often took place in sacred groves, where members draped in white robes would pour libations into the earth, symbolizing their bond with the land's unseen forces. But their influence went beyond punishment. The Ogboni were also keepers of balance, ensuring harmony between humanity and nature. Their emblem, a circle with a line through it, represented the interconnectedness of life and death, order and chaos. To cross them wasn't just to defy a secret order, it was to invite the wrath of the earth itself. Though their power waned under colonial rule, traces of their legacy endure. Today, those bronze Eden staffs still surface in museums and markets, their silent faces holding secrets we may never fully decipher. And in some Yoruba communities, whispers persist of elders who remember the old ways and the weight of sacred earth in their hands. Hidden among the bustling trade routes of 19th century India moved a brotherhood so feared that their name became synonymous with stealthy violence, the Thuggee. Unlike other secret societies that operated in cellars or coded letters, these assassins walked the open roads, disguising themselves as harmless travelers. Their weapon of choice, a deceptively simple yellow silk scarf they called the rumal, which could snap a man's neck in seconds. But what set them apart wasn't just their brutality, it was their eerie devotion to the goddess Kali, who they believed demanded human sacrifice as payment for her protection. The Thuggee's methods were chillingly methodical. Posing as fellow pilgrims or merchants, they'd gain travelers' trust over days or even weeks, sharing campfires and meals. Then, when the moment was right, one member would distract the victim while another slipped the silk noose around their throat. a ritual they called the Kun Ka Bent, or blood offering. No screams, no struggle, just silence, followed by a shallow grave dug with ceremonial care. Estimates suggest they may have claimed tens of thousands of lives before British colonial forces cracked down in the 1830s. Yet separating fact from legend is tricky. Hollywood turned them into faceless monsters, but historical accounts reveal a more complex picture. Thuggee initiates underwent grueling training, learning a secret lexicon called Ramazi to communicate in front of outsiders. Some recruits claimed they were born into the cult, passing down techniques through generations like a dark family trade. And while British officials painted them as savage fanatics, modern historians debate whether colonial authorities exaggerated their menace to justify tighter control. One truth remains: the Thuggees' legacy lingers in India's collective memory. Today, their rumal scarves gather dust in museums, and the word thug has traveled far beyond its origins. But walk certain lonely stretches of road at dusk, and locals might still warn you to listen for the whisper of silk on the wind, a ghostly reminder that some secrets refuse to stay buried. Beneath the turmoil of Europe's 17th century, a time of witch trials and bloody religious wars, a rumor began to spread like wildfire. Pamphlets appeared in city squares and scholarly circles, unsigned and undated, describing a secret brotherhood of alchemists who claimed to possess ancient wisdom capable of revolutionizing science, medicine, and even politics. They called themselves the Rosicrucians, named after their mythical founder, Christian Rosicrucians, a shadowy figure said to have traveled the East, unlocking secrets of nature long forgotten by the West. But here's the catch: no one could prove they actually existed. The Rosicrucian manifestos, published between 1614 and 1616, read like a proto-science fiction saga. They spoke of an invisible college of enlightened adepts working behind the scenes to usher in a new golden age, one where diseases would be cured with alchemical elixirs, governments would rule with divine wisdom, and the very fabric of reality could be reshaped through sacred geometry. To desperate peasants and persecuted scholars alike, it was a tantalizing vision, but the manifestos also carried a warning: only those deemed spiritually and intellectually worthy would ever find the Rosicrucians. This deliberate ambiguity fueled centuries of speculation. Were the texts an elaborate hoax, a recruitment tool for a real underground network, or something stranger, a work of intellectual theater meant to provoke societal change? The answer may lie in the timing. The manifestos emerged at the dawn of the scientific revolution, when figures like Galileo faced persecution for challenging dogma. By framing their ideas as secrets passed down from antiquity, the Rosicrucians, or whoever wrote their texts, created a shield against heresy charges while subtly promoting radical concepts like religious tolerance and empirical inquiry. Their influence rippled far beyond their era. Freemasons borrowed their symbols. 19th-century occultists like Madame Blavatsky cited them as precursors to theosophy, and even modern tech billionaires flirt with Rosicrucian ideals of merging science and mysticism. Today, dozens of groups claim descent from the original brotherhood, from serious esoteric orders to New Age book clubs. But the central mystery endures: was there ever a true Rosicrucian order, or did their power lie precisely in their elusiveness? Perhaps their greatest alchemical trick was turning absence into legend, proving that sometimes the most enduring secrets are those never fully revealed. Deep beneath the rolling hills of Buckinghamshire, hidden behind a facade of genteel aristocracy, lay a playground for England's most scandalous elite, the Hellfire Club. Founded in the 1740s by Sir Francis Dashwood, this wasn't just another society of bored nobles. It was a carefully staged rebellion against the moral rigidity of the era, wrapped in theatrical blasphemy and whispered rumors of satanic worship. Their meeting place, a network of man-made caves dubbed the Hellfire Caves, where flickering torchlight illuminated walls adorned with lewd frescoes of pagan gods and demons. a far cry from the stuffy drawing rooms of London's high society. At first glance, their rituals seemed like drunken aristocratic antics. Members dressed as monks or mythological figures staged mock excommunications and toasted to the devil's health with goblets of expensive wine. But beneath the raucous laughter and staged sacrilege, something darker simmered. Dashwood and his inner circle weren't just indulging in hedonism, they were testing boundaries. By parodying religious ceremonies, they mocked the very institutions that wielded power over Enlightenment-era Britain. Some historians argue these theatrics were elaborate cover for something far more dangerous: political subversion. Many members, including Dashwood himself, held high-ranking government positions. Their caves became a safe space to debate radical ideas, from free-thinking philosophy to opposition against the crown, while outsiders dismissed them as mere libertines. The club's roster read like a who's who of Georgian England's rogues gallery. Benjamin Franklin, during his time in London, was rumored to have attended meetings, possibly gathering intelligence for the American colonies. The Earl of Sandwich, later infamous for his culinary invention, allegedly participated in rituals so outrageous they couldn't be printed in contemporary pamphlets. Even the walls of the cave seemed to whisper secrets. Their murals depicted mythological orgies and occult symbols, blending art with psychological warfare against societal norms. Yet the Hellfire Club's true power lay in its ambiguity. Were they devil worshippers? Probably not. Political puppeteers? Almost certainly. By wrapping dissent in debauchery, they created a perfect smokescreen. When accusations flew, they could laugh them off as drunken folly, all while shaping policies and alliances in the shadows. Today, their caves still exist, a tourist attraction with a wink and a nudge. But walk those damp tunnels alone, and you might still feel the echo of laughter, not just from long-dead nobles, but from the lingering question: how much of history is written by those who knew the power of a well-timed scandal? One thing's certain: their legacy proves that sometimes the most effective rebellion comes dressed as a costume party, and the most dangerous secrets are hidden in plain sight, painted on the walls where no one thinks to look. While history's secret societies often feel like relics of a distant past, one group proves the tradition of closed-door power never truly disappeared: the Bilderberg Group. Since 1954, this invitation-only gathering has brought together billionaires, politicians, and industry titans under a veil of calculated secrecy, sparking decades of speculation about their true influence. Unlike medieval brotherhoods with coded handshakes, the Bilderbergers operate with slick efficiency. No minutes are published, no recordings permitted, and attendees pledge strict confidentiality about discussions. But here's what we do know. Every year, roughly 130 of the world's most connected individuals, from Silicon Valley CEOs to European royalty, gather at five-star hotels under intense security. Officially, it's just an informal forum for frank dialogue on global issues. Unofficially, to critics, it's the world's most exclusive shadow government. The group's origins trace back to Cold War anxieties. Prince Bernhard of the Netherlands, along with a Polish exile and a Belgian diplomat, envisioned a discreet space where Western leaders could debate strategies away from public scrutiny. Early meetings focused on countering communism, but the scope quickly expanded. Today, agenda items range from artificial intelligence to climate policy topics that ripple across headlines months after the conferences. This timing fuels conspiracy theories. When former UK Chancellor George Osborne attended in 2006, then introduced austerity measures shortly after, critics saw a smoking gun. Similar patterns emerge with tech regulations and energy policies that mirror Bilderberg discussions. Defenders argue correlation isn't causation, that these are simply influential people who shape policy through normal channels later. Yet the opacity breeds distrust. Attendees insist no votes are taken, but leaked accounts reveal chilling details. At a 1998 meeting, a participant reportedly suggested deploying behavioral science to manipulate public opinion on climate change, a tactic later seen in green initiatives worldwide. The guest list also raises eyebrows. While media moguls and central bankers mingled privately, journalists allowed in must agree to Chatham House rules, preventing them from attributing statements. It's a system that watches itself. No need for blood oaths when social ruin awaits whistleblowers. Perhaps the most intriguing twist is how the group weaponizes its own mystique. By neither fully denying their influence nor embracing transparency, they exist in a credibility gray zone. When Elon Musk tweeted about Bilderberg-level secrets in 2023, he didn't clarify whether he mocked or admired them, and that ambiguity is their genius. In an age of leaks and hashtags, their power lies in the unproven, the whispered. They've mastered alchemy of a different kind, turning speculation into intimidation and silence into legend. After all, what's more terrifying than a secret society, one that might not even need to hide? Beneath the Gothic spires of Yale University, a windowless crypt known as the Tomb guards secrets that have shaped American power for nearly 2 centuries. This is the headquarters of Skull and Bones, the elite society whose members include presidents, spies, and titans of industry, all bound by rituals as bizarre as they are exclusive. Founded in 1832, the group selects just 15 Yale seniors each year, initiating them into a world of arcane symbolism and whispered influence. But what happens inside those sandstone walls? The truth is stranger than fiction. Initiation begins with a ritual that would make a medieval knight blush. New recruits called knights are reportedly forced to lie in coffins while confessing their deepest sexual secrets to the assembled members. Others claim initiates must wrestle naked in mud, symbolizing rebirth into the brotherhood. The society's relics only deepen the mystery. Legend says their collection includes the stolen skulls of Apache leader Geronimo and former Mexican President Pancho Villa, though Yale officially denies this. More verifiable are the bizarre traditions, like addressing each other by numbered nicknames, Bonesman 323, or gathering annually to drink from a chalice shaped like a human cranium. Yet the real power lies in their alumni network. 3 U.S. presidents, including both George Bush Sr. and Jr., wore the society's ring, as did CIA directors and Fortune 500 CEOs. This isn't just a college club, it's a pipeline to the corridors of power. Former Secretary of State John Kerry and his political rival George W. Bush reportedly paused their campaign attacks to share a private bones reunion during the 2004 election. A chilling glimpse into how loyalty to the society can transcend even bitter partisanship. Critics call it the ultimate old boys network, where deals are struck over coded language and handshakes. Defenders insist it's merely a quirky tradition with exaggerated influence. But when former members refuse to discuss it even under congressional oath, as happened during a 1988 investigation, the silence speaks volumes. Perhaps the most telling detail, the society's motto, "Who was the fool, who the wise man, beggar or king?" It's a reminder that behind the skulls and secrecy, the real game has always been about who holds the keys and who's left knocking at the door. High in the mountains of medieval Persia, a brotherhood of killers perfected the art of political murder with chilling precision, the Hashashin. Far from the mindless brutes of crusader propaganda, these assassins were strategic masterminds who understood that sometimes removing one key figure could shift the balance of entire empires. Their name, derived from the Arabic word for hashish users, spawned legends of drug-fueled killers, but the truth behind their methods is even more fascinating. The Hashashin didn't rely on brute force. Instead, they operated with surgical precision, infiltrating the courts and camps of their enemies disguised as servants or scholars. When the moment came, their strikes were swift and public. A dagger plunged into a sleeping sultan's tent, a poisoning at a royal banquet. These weren't random acts of violence. Each assassination was a calculated message. By eliminating high-profile targets in broad daylight, they proved no one was beyond their reach, turning fear into a weapon as potent as any blade, one of their most infamous feats. The murder of Conrad of Montferrat, King of Jerusalem, in 1192. Dressed as Christian monks, Hashashin agents waited for months to get close, then struck as he walked through the city streets. The killing sent shockwaves through the Crusader ranks, proving even kings weren't safe. But their true genius lay in psychological warfare. Before an attack, they'd often leave a dagger pinned to a target's pillow, a silent warning that bought compliance without bloodshed. The myth of their paradise gardens, where recruits were supposedly drugged and shown a fabricated heaven to motivate them, likely grew from enemy smears. In reality, their loyalty came from rigorous training and ideological fervor. They were devout followers of the Nizari Ismaili sect, believing their mission served divine justice. Their fortress stronghold, Alamat, became a symbol of defiance, perched on cliffs so sheer that even the mightiest armies couldn't storm it. Yet their greatest legacy might be linguistic. The word assassin entered European languages through terrified crusaders' retellings, a testament to how thoroughly they haunted the medieval imagination. Today, their name echoes in everything from video games to political thrillers, but the real Hashashin were far more than just killers. They were pioneers of asymmetric warfare, proving that a small, disciplined group could challenge empires not with armies but with the careful application of terror. And in an age of drones and cyber warfare, their tactics feel uncomfortably modern. The year was 1776, the same fateful year the Declaration of Independence reshaped the New World, when a little-known law professor in Bavaria set out to remake society through the power of secrets. Adam Weishaupt's Illuminati bore little resemblance to the all-powerful cabal of modern conspiracy theories. Instead, imagine a book club with revolutionary ambitions. Their weapon of choice, not daggers or spells, but Enlightenment philosophy. Weishaupt, a disillusioned ex-Jesuit, envisioned a network of perfectibilists who would infiltrate governments and churches to dismantle superstition and hereditary privilege from within. Members adopted classical codenames. Weishaupt was Spartacus, and communicated through an elaborate system of ciphers and invisible ink. Their ranks included judges, professors, and even a few rogue nobles, all united by a radical idea that reason, not tradition, should govern humanity. But how did this obscure academic circle become the boogeyman of conspiracy lore? The answer lies in their brutal suppression. By 1785, Bavarian authorities, terrified of their growing influence, outlawed the group and published their private papers to expose their treason. These documents, meant to discredit them, instead became fodder for wild speculation. Suddenly, every Masonic lodge and political upheaval was suspected of Illuminati manipulation. The irony, the real society had likely dissolved years earlier, crushed under its own bureaucratic disarray, the pyramid and eye symbol so often linked to them. That was a later Masonic addition, co-opted by conspiracy theorists. Weishaupt's original group used simpler imagery, an owl of Minerva representing wisdom rising at dusk. Modern claims of their survival hinge on tenuous connections, like the 1963 founding of the Bilderberg Group, occurring exactly 188 years after the Illuminati's creation, 188 being Weishaupt's birth year rearranged. Yet their true legacy is subtler. The Illuminati's real infiltration succeeded beyond Weishaupt's dreams, not through shadowy plots, but because their ideals of secular governance and meritocracy gradually became mainstream. Today, when someone accuses a politician of being Illuminati, they're ironically echoing the very Enlightenment values the real group championed, the ultimate twist. The society feared for its power was, in truth, a cautionary tale about how easily revolutionary ideas can morph into mythology, and how the loudest whispers often drown out history's quieter truths. Everyone's heard of the Freemasons. Their symbols pepper our dollar bills. Their lodges hide in plain sight in every major city, and their influence has fueled conspiracy theories for centuries. But buried within their well-documented history lies a bizarre offshoot that most have forgotten: the Antient Order of Druids, a 19th-century splinter group that swapped compasses and squares for oak leaves and mistletoe. While mainstream Masonry focused on architectural symbolism, these renegade lodges worshipped sacred groves, performed tree-planting ceremonies with quasi-mystical precision, and even claimed direct descent from prehistoric Celtic priests. The Druidic Masons didn't just borrow pagan aesthetics, they rewrote the rulebook. Initiates underwent rituals in forest clearings at dawn, their aprons embroidered with crescent moons instead of the usual Masonic tools. One surviving manual describes a ceremony where candidates circled a potted sapling 9 times, reciting verses about the blood of the earth before anointing its roots with wine. To outsiders, it might have looked like eccentric gardening, but to members, these acts were sacred, a fusion of Enlightenment rationalism and primal nature worship. Their lodges became underground nurseries for radical environmentalism, decades before the conservation movement took root. What's most surprising isn't their paganism, but their pragmatism. While romantic poets like William Blake idealized Druids as mystical sages, these Masonic offshoots had dirt under their fingernails. They funded reforestation projects, documented endangered plant species, and even lobbied Parliament against industrial pollution, all while maintaining elaborate initiation rites involving blindfolds made of ivy and oath stones believed to curse liars. Their legacy lingers in unexpected places. Modern urban tree planting initiatives often unknowingly replicate their ceremonial layouts, and the term Druid still carries a whisper of their peculiar blend of secrecy and botany. Yet their story also reveals Masonry's hidden flexibility. Most people assume these societies rigidly guard tradition, but the Druidic splinter proves otherwise. When a group of stonemasons' descendants started worshipping trees instead of tracing blueprints, it showed how easily secret societies adapt, absorbing new ideas while keeping their core allure intact. Today, as Druidry enjoys a New Age revival, few realize some of its rituals were coded into existence by men who also knew how to tie a perfect square knot. The lesson: even the most entrenched secrets can grow unexpected branches. The Knights Templar may have officially dissolved in the early 14th century, but their influence didn't vanish, it simply went underground, resurfacing in the unlikeliest of places. While most know them as the warrior monks of the Crusades, few realize their wealth and secrets fueled an entirely different kind of conquest, the Age of Exploration. Enter the Order of Christ, Portugal's shadowy successor to the Templars, who didn't just preserve the old Brotherhood's treasures, they used them to rewrite the map of the world. When Pope Clement V disbanded the Templars in 1314 under pressure from France's king, Portugal's monarch saw an opportunity. Instead of persecuting the knights, he quietly rebranded them as the Order of Christ, transferring their vast assets, including a legendary network of banks and shipyards, to this new entity. Overnight, the warrior monks became explorer priests. Their distinctive Red Cross sails appeared on caravels that would eventually round Africa and reach India, with none other than Vasco da Gama himself allegedly carrying their banner. But their real power lay in something far more cryptic: star charts and navigation tools rumored to incorporate Templar geometry. Deciphering these maps reveals a tantalizing possibility that the knights' famed lost knowledge wasn't just religious relics but advanced celestial mathematics. The Order of Christ sailors used something called the volte du mar, a navigation technique that exploited Atlantic wind patterns. Modern historians argue this wasn't just trial and error. It matched coordinates found in recovered Templar manuscripts, suggesting they'd secretly mapped routes long before Columbus. Their monastery at Toma became a clearinghouse for explorers, its windows aligned to solstice angles that doubled as nautical bearings. Even the famed Henry the Navigator, mastermind of Portugal's voyages, was their Grand Master, a fact often glossed over in textbooks. Yet the most compelling evidence isn't in archives but in stone. The Order's symbols, like the 8-pointed star carved into their forts, mirror Templar sigils found from Jerusalem to Scotland. Some researchers claim these weren't just badges of faith but coded directions. One theory suggests their star maps pointed to Brazil decades before its official discovery, a secret too valuable to publicize. When Portuguese ships suddenly began carrying oddly specific cargoes of Brazil wood and exotic animals, it hints at prior knowledge, the ultimate irony. While the Church had once hunted the Templars for heresy, their successors became the Vatican's chosen instrument for spreading Christianity overseas. The Order of Christ proves that the best-kept secrets aren't always lost sometimes. They're simply repurposed, hidden behind new names and sails billowing with old ambitions. And if you examine the night sky as their navigators did, you might still trace the faint outline of a cross between the stars. In the dark forests of medieval Westphalia, justice didn't come from kings or magistrates. It arrived with a rusted iron collar and 3 silent crosses carved into a tree. This was the domain of the Weimgericht, a shadowy tribunal so feared that even the Holy Roman Emperor dared not interfere with its verdicts. Part secret society, part vigilante network, their trials unfolded under moonlit oaks where accused criminals faced judgment without witnesses, appeals, or mercy. To receive one of their warrants marked with those infamous 3 crosses was to be already dead. The verdict came first, the trial afterward, if at all. The Weimgericht's origins trace back to the chaos of the 13th century, when lawlessness plagued the German countryside. Unlike official courts bound by church and crown, these self-appointed judges operated with terrifying efficiency. Their members, called Freischerfen, were often respected landowners or tradesmen by day, but by night they donned hoods and carried out sentences with chilling precision. The accused would awaken to find an iron collar nailed to their door, a silent summons to a trial where the judges' faces remained hidden, their voices disguised. Those who fled were declared vogelfrei, meaning anyone could kill them like a bird in flight, no questions asked. What set the Weimgericht apart wasn't just their brutality, but their eerie formalism. Every execution followed a rigid script. The condemned was led to a clearing where a rope and knife were laid on a stump, symbols of the 2 fates awaiting them: quick hanging or slow bleeding. If they confessed, death came swiftly. If they refused, the Freischerfen would sharpen their blades in unison, a sound meant to break the staunchest defiance. Yet for all their savagery, the Weimgericht claimed divine sanction. Their seal bore the inscription STN, short for strike, trust in God, a chilling blend of piety and violence. The society's reach was staggering. At its height, the Weimgericht allegedly counted over 100,000 members across Germany, their networks stretching into neighboring kingdoms. Even nobles weren't immune. When a local duke tried to dismantle the group in the 15th century, he was found hanged from an oak, a 3-cross warrant pinned to his chest. Their decline came not from defeat but from obsolescence. As centralized courts grew stronger, the need for midnight justice faded. Yet their legacy lingers in language. The German word Weim still connotes merciless retribution, and those 3 crosses. They've been found etched into trees as late as the 1920s, a ghostly reminder that some forms of justice prefer the shadows. Amid the rolling hills of 14th century China, where emperors built walls and peasants bowed to the celestial mandate, a rebellion grew in plain sight, hidden not in shadowy cellars but in the open petals of a white lotus. The White Lotus Society began as a humble Buddhist sect, preaching salvation through devotion to the Buddha of infinite light. But when the Mongol-led Yuan dynasty tightened its grip, their peaceful prayers turned revolutionary. Worshippers passed secret messages disguised as sutras, using lotus imagery to coordinate across villages. A single flower drawn on a temple wall might signal when to strike, while the number of petals indicated which officials to target. To authorities, they were just another peasant cult. To initiates, they were the threads of a coming paradise. Their genius lay in dual identities. By day, members were farmers chanting harmless mantras. By night, they trained in martial arts techniques passed down through generations, their movements disguised as harvest dances. This merging of spirituality and combat birthed legends. Some claim the White Lotus pioneered the Red Fist style later adopted by Shaolin monks, while others whisper their acrobatic evasion tactics inspired ninjutsu. What's certain is their tactical brilliance. When the rebellion finally erupted in 1351, their decentralized cells made them nearly impossible to crush. One Ming-era account describes entire imperial battalions lured into bamboo forests where White Lotus fighters swung from vines, their iron-tipped shoes striking like venomous snakes. But their real weapon was myth. Leaders claimed invincibility through sacred amulets, tiny lotus-shaped lockets supposedly filled with ashes of enlightened masters. A surviving manifesto declares, "When the lotus opens, the Pure Land appears on earth, framing revolt as cosmic destiny." This millennial fervor terrified rulers. Even after the Ming dynasty they helped install turned against them, their symbolism endured. King emperors banned White Lotus imagery entirely, yet the flower kept blooming. In folk operas, in secret society initiation rites, even in 20th century political movements. Today, their legacy lives in paradox. Martial arts films romanticize them as noble rebels, while historians debate whether they were freedom fighters or fanatics. But walk through certain southern Chinese villages during the Lotus Festival, and you might still hear elders sing an old harvesting song one scholars say contains their battle cries, disguised as verses about rainfall and blossoms. The White Lotus proved that sometimes the most dangerous revolutions aren't fought with swords alone, but with symbols so beautiful no one thinks to forbid them until it's too late. In the smoky backrooms of early 20th century Belgrade, a secret society was forging a weapon far more dangerous than any blade disillusioned youth. The Black Hand, known formally as unification or death, didn't just plot political murders, they weaponized teenage idealism, twisting nationalism into a deadly creed. Their most infamous recruit, 19-year-old Gavrilo Princip, would etch their name into history with 2 pistol shots in Sarajevo bullets that ignited the powder keg of World War I. But how did a group of poets and students become the architects of global conflict? The answer lies in their chilling recruitment rituals. New members were led into candlelit basements where they'd kneel before a table draped in black cloth, their hands pressed against a revolver and a vial of poison. The oath they swore wasn't just to secrecy, it was to martyrdom. "I hereby swear by the sun that shines upon me, by the earth that feeds me, by God, by the blood of my ancestors." The pledge began, concluding with a promise to accept death itself if they betrayed the cause. This theatrical blend of romanticism and brutality resonated with young men who saw themselves as modern-day knights liberating Serbia from Austro-Hungarian oppression. The Black Hand's leaders, like shadowy puppeteer Dragutin Dimitrijevic, codename Apis, understood something terrifying: give a teenager a sacred purpose and a gun, and empires will tremble. Their tactics were meticulously psychological. Recruits underwent trials by cold, forced to stand barefoot in snow for hours to prove their endurance, and were assigned assassinations of minor officials as practice runs. One surviving training manual instructed cell leaders to manipulate recruits' guilt, remind them their mothers weep under foreign rule. By the time Princip and his cell were dispatched to Sarajevo in 1914, they were so indoctrinated that when their first bomb attempt failed, they didn't flee, they lingered, determined to complete their mission at any cost. The aftermath revealed the Black Hand's fatal miscalculation. they'd envisioned Ferdinand's death triggering a localized Balkan uprising, not a continental war. As global powers mobilized, their own government turned against them, executing Dimitrijević in 1917 to appease the Allies. Yet their legacy persists in modern insurgent playbooks, from child soldier recruitment to ideological blood bonding. The Black Hand proved that the most explosive secrets aren't always kept in locked vaults. Sometimes they're whispered in the ears of boys barely old enough to shave. While Europe's Industrial Revolution churned out steam engines and electric lights, a group of Victorian intellectuals were plumbing far older mysteries in the dim glow of oil lamps. The Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn wasn't just another occult club. It was a meticulously structured shadow university where poets, doctors, and aristocrats studied forgotten languages, decrypted ancient ciphers, and practiced rituals they believed could alter reality itself. Founded in 1888 by Freemason William Wynne Westcott and his enigmatic colleague Samuel Mathers, the order's curriculum stretched from Egyptian tarot to Hebrew Kabbalah, blending them into a system so complex that even initiates needed years to grasp its depths. Their headquarters, nestled behind an unremarkable London storefront, housed something extraordinary: cipher manuscripts allegedly written by a secret German adept, filled with diagrams that mapped the universe as a series of interlocking spheres and symbols. Enter Aleister Crowley, the Order's most infamous initiate, a man who'd later dub himself the Great Beast and redefine occultism's boundaries. Crowley joined in 1898, quickly rising through the ranks with a blend of genius and brashness that horrified the establishment. While most members focused on meditative rituals, Crowley pushed further, experimenting with what he called sex magic, using conscious intimacy as a conduit for mystical energy. One surviving diary describes a ceremony where he and his partner traced sigils on each other's skin with consecrated oils, attempting to manifest spiritual visions through controlled sensory deprivation. To Victorian society, it was scandalous. To Crowley, it was pure science. Every act must become a ritual, he wrote, every breath a prayer. The Order's true power lay in its cipher system. Unlike simple substitution codes, their manuscripts employed a multi-layered language combining Enochian calls, a 16th-century angelic tongue, alchemical symbols, and geometric shapes that corresponded to psychic states. Decoding them required not just linguistic skill, but synesthetic intuition. Some pages could only be understood by holding them near candlelight at specific angles, revealing hidden layers like spiritual carbon paper. When Mathers published the Book of the Sacred Magic of Abramelin the Mage, he claimed it contained instructions for achieving knowledge and conversation of one's holy guardian angel, a process so intense it required 6 months of solitary preparation. Yet the Golden Dawn's brilliance was also its undoing. Internal power struggles erupted when Crowley accused Mathers of fabricating their foundational documents, leading to a schism that fractured the Order by 1903. Its legacy, however, proved indelible. W.B. Yeats used its symbols in his poetry, while its tarot system became the basis for most modern decks. Today, when you see a television psychic lay out cards or hear a celebrity mention manifesting, you're glimpsing fragments of a system designed not for parlor tricks but for reshaping human consciousness, one encrypted page at a time. The real mystery: how much of their knowledge remains locked in plain sight, waiting for the right cipher to reveal it. High atop the sheer cliffs of Alamut, where eagles wheeled against an unforgiving sky, the Hashishin built more than a fortress. They crafted a myth so potent it would echo for 1,000 years. This wasn't just a stronghold of stone and mortar. It was a psychological weapon, a place where reality itself seemed to bend to the will of its master, Hassan I Saba. The phrase often attributed to him, "Nothing is true, everything is permitted," wasn't a license for chaos, as later interpreters claimed, but a chilling declaration of ideological flexibility in service of a higher truth. Marco Polo's tales of Alamat's paradise garden, where drugged assassins awoke to a fabricated heaven of wine and avarice, have long colored popular imagination. But recent archaeology paints a far more pragmatic picture. Excavations reveal a fortress meticulously designed for siege survival, granaries stocked for years, intricate water channels carved into bedrock, and terraced gardens growing medicinal herbs, not hallucinogens. The real mind games were subtler. Hassan understood that perception shapes reality better than any drug. Initiates underwent rigorous mental conditioning, forced to stand for days on Alamat's vertigo-inducing battlements until they internalized absolute loyalty. When they descended to carry out missions, their conviction alone made them seem superhuman. The fortress's layout reveals its true genius. Unlike European castles with towering keeps, Alamat's power center was deliberately modest, a low, windowless hall where Hassan would receive visitors. Its walls were painted entirely black, with a single shaft of light illuminating his seated figure. To envoys from rival empires, the effect was unnerving, a man who ruled shadows literally and figuratively. Even Alamat's surrender to the Mongols in 1256 was staged as psychological theater. Rather than fight, the last Hashashin Grand Master ordered the fortress burned, ensuring its legend would outlive its stones. Today, climbing Alamat's ruins, you can still trace the grooves where sentries sharpened their daggers and find niches where lookout posts offered unobstructed views of approaching armies. But the most telling artifact isn't a weapon, it's the remnants of an extensive library. Scroll fragments recovered from nearby caves contain not just religious texts, but works on astronomy, medicine, and philosophy. This duality, scholar and killer, was the Hashashins' real innovation. They didn't need artificial paradises when they could weaponize knowledge itself, proving that the most enduring assassinations aren't of people but of outdated ideas. The Mongols razed Alamat, but they couldn't erase the simple, terrifying lesson etched into its cliffs. When you control what people believe to be possible, you need no walls at all. The dusty archives of a French library seemed an unlikely place to spark one of history's most elaborate historical frauds, until 1956, when a series of cryptic parchments surfaced, purporting to reveal a centuries-old secret. Jesus Christ didn't die on the cross, but fled to France with Mary Magdalene, fathering a royal bloodline guarded by a shadowy order called the Priory of Sion. The documents, allegedly discovered in the Bibliothèque Nationale, bore signatures of luminaries like Leonardo da Vinci and Isaac Newton, listed as past Grand Masters. There was just one problem: every scrap of parchment was an elaborate fake. The mastermind behind this fabrication was Pierre Plantard, a French draftsman with a penchant for conspiracy theories and a criminal record for fraud. Plantard's genius wasn't in the forgeries themselves, crudely typed pages stained with tea to look antique, but in how he seeded them. He planted the so-called dossier secrets in libraries across Europe, then discovered them with the help of gullible researchers. His fabricated lineage even claimed he was the true heir to the French throne, descended from Christ himself. The press lapped it up, and soon the Priory of Sion was being debated in academic circles as a genuine medieval order. Enter Dan Brown's The Da Vinci Code, which catapulted Plantard's hoax into global consciousness. Brown's novel treated the Priory as fact, weaving its secrets into a thriller about hidden gospels and Vatican cover-ups. Overnight, tourists flooded Rennes-le-Château, the French village where Plantard claimed clues were hidden, scouring churches for codes. The irony: Brown's fictionalization gave the myth more staying power than Plantard ever achieved. By the time a French court exposed the fraud in 1993, forcing Plantard to admit under oath that he'd invented everything, the legend had taken on a life of its own. What makes the Priory of Sion fascinating isn't the forgery, but why it resonated. At its core, the story taps into timeless cravings for hidden knowledge, for challenges to institutional power, for the idea that history's greatest truths might still be waiting in some forgotten manuscript. Modern conspiracy theories, from QAnon to ancient astronaut myths, follow the same blueprint. Take a kernel of doubt, wrap it in elaborate evidence, and let human imagination do the rest. The real secret society here wasn't Plantard's fictional priory. It was the collective willingness to believe that the world's oldest mysteries might finally be solved if we just look hard enough. Beneath the rubble of Germany's defeat in World War I, where veterans starved and empires crumbled, a clandestine circle gathered in Munich's cafes with a vision far darker than mere political revival. The Thule Society, named after the mythical northern homeland of ancient Aryans, began as an esoteric book club obsessed with runes and Nordic legends, but their occult dabbling would soon twist into the ideological backbone of the Third Reich. Their meeting rooms, draped in black banners embroidered with golden swastikas, became laboratories for a poisoned mythology. The idea that Germany's salvation lay in purging lesser races and uncovering lost Atlantean supertechnology. The swastika's adoption as the Nazi emblem was no accident. Thule founder Rudolf von Sebetendorf claimed the symbol channeled Vril, a cosmic energy described in Edward Bulwer Lytton's occult novel The Coming Race. Members practiced meditative rituals to harness this force, believing it could awaken dormant Aryan superhuman traits. Hitler's deputy Rudolf Hess was a frequent attendee, and some accounts suggest the future Führer himself underwent an initiation in 1919, though no smoking gun proof exists. What's certain is that Thule's influence flowed directly into Nazi ideology through men like Alfred Rosenberg, whose racist pseudoscience justified the Holocaust, and Dietrich Eckart, the shadowy mentor who reportedly told friends on his deathbed, "Follow Hitler, he will dance, but it is I who called the tune." Their most bizarre legacy, the myth of Neuschwabenland. In 1938, as Hitler consolidated power, the Nazis sent an expedition to Antarctica, allegedly to map territory for a secret base. Conspiracy theories later claimed the Thule Society had provided coordinates to a hollow Earth paradise beneath the ice, where surviving Nazis built UFO like flying discs using occult technology. Reality was less fantastical. The expedition's real goal was likely to secure whale oil for munitions, but the whispers endure. Declassified U.S. military maps from the 1940s do show strange markings near the expedition's landing site, labeled only as geothermal anomalies. Were the Nazis chasing Thule's ghosts, or did their own propaganda about a master race's hidden homeland become a self-fulfilling delusion? The Thule Society's true danger lay in how it weaponized mysticism. By dressing racial hatred in the robes of ancient wisdom, they made genocide feel like spiritual destiny. When their Munich headquarters was raided in 1919, police found a chilling ledger listing members alongside notations like Jew or half-Jew, a precursor to the Nuremberg laws. Today, their emblem still surfaces in neo-Nazi gatherings, a reminder that the line between mythology and madness is thinner than an old parchment and far more flammable. For nearly 2,000 years, the hills outside Athens echoed with a secret so potent that initiates would rather die than reveal it, the Eleusinian mysteries. Unlike shadowy brotherhoods meeting in locked rooms, this was ancient Greece's most sacred psychedelic rite. A state-sponsored vision quest where philosophers and slaves alike drank a mysterious brew called Kykeon and glimpsed the afterlife. At its heart stood Demeter, the grain goddess whose myth of losing her daughter Persephone to the underworld became a blueprint for transcendence. Each autumn, thousands trekked to Eleusis, swearing a blood oath before entering the Telesterion, a cavernous hall where flickering torches illuminated ceremonies no written record fully describes. The penalty for breaking silence, execution, yet somehow, across centuries, not a single initiate cracked. What made these rites worth dying for? The answer might lie in the dirt. Modern archaeologists analyzing residue from Eleusinian cups found traces of ergot, a fungus that grows on barley and contains lysergic acid, the same compound that gives LSD its potency. When mixed with water and mint, as described in fragmentary Kykean recipes, it could induce vivid hallucinations. Imagine the scene. After days of fasting and ritual reenactments of Demeter's grief, initiates drank from a shared chalice, then witnessed the telesterian's walls seemingly dissolve into endless fields of wheat, a divine vision of rebirth mirroring Persephone's annual return from Hades. The poet Pindar wrote that those who experienced the mysteries knew the end of life and its God-given beginning, while Plato compared the revelations to emerging from a dark cave into sunlight. But the mysteries weren't just about tripping. Their genius was theatricality. Initiates first endured the Dromna, a choreographed ordeal where they retraced Demeter's desperate search for Persephone through pitch-black tunnels, symbolizing descent into death. At the climax, priests unveiled a single ear of wheat, an ordinary object transformed into a cosmic emblem through sheer ritual context. This psychological staging, combined with psychoactive enhancement, created what historian Walter Burkert called controlled terror turned to euphoria. Even skeptics like Cicero admitted the rites gave Greeks a reason to live and a way to die without fear. The cult's demise came not from scandal but Christianity. When Roman Emperor Theodosius outlawed pagan worship in 392 AD, the telesterian's great doors were sealed forever. Yet traces linger. Some scholars argue early Christian baptismal rites borrowed Eleusinian elements, trading Kykeon for wine and Demeter's wheat for Christ's bread. And in a Swiss lab in 1943, chemist Albert Hofmann synthesized LSD from ergot, unknowingly recreating the very compound that might have fueled antiquity's greatest spiritual experiences. Today, as scientists study psychedelics for treating death anxiety, the Eleusinian secret seems less like superstition and more like the first recorded clinical trial in human transcendence. The true mystery, whether those ancient Greeks discovered something about consciousness we're still struggling to relearn. In the lush valleys of 12th century southern France, a quiet revolution was unfolding, not with swords, but with whispered debates about the nature of the universe. The Cathars, a Christian sect branded as heretics by the medieval church, didn't meet in shadowy crypts or wear elaborate robes. Instead, their initiates, known as the perfecti, or perfect ones, lived simply, dressed in plain black, and carried forbidden knowledge in their minds rather than locked chests. Their radical belief that the material world was a prison created by a false god, and true divinity existed only in the realm of pure spirit. To them, even the cross was a symbol of torture, not salvation. This cosmic dualism made them dangerous. While most medieval heresies nibbled at the edges of church doctrine, the Cathars rejected it entirely. They saw the Catholic sacraments as meaningless rituals, dismissed the Old Testament as the work of a lesser demiurge, and practiced a form of baptism, the consolamentum, that could only be received once, usually on one's deathbed. Their priests were as likely to be women as men, a notion that scandalized feudal Europe. But what truly set them apart was their refusal to swear oaths, an act they saw as binding the soul to the corrupt physical world. In an era where feudal loyalty was cemented with vows, this wasn't just heresy, it was treason against the very fabric of society. The Church's response was apocalyptic. In 1209, Pope Innocent Roman III launched the Albigensian Crusade, named after the Cathar stronghold of Albi. What followed wasn't just a war, but a systematic erasure. At Béziers, when Crusaders asked how to distinguish Cathars from true Catholics, the papal legate reportedly said, "Kill them all, God will know his own." 20,000 were slaughtered in a single day. The siege of Montségur became the Cathars' last stand, where over 200 perfecti were burned alive on a pyre so massive it was said to light the mountains for miles. Yet their legacy smoldered in unexpected ways. Some historians argue the Crusades' brutality planted early seeds of anti-clericalism that would later bloom into the Protestant Reformation. Their love of vernacular scripture inspired vernacular Bibles, challenging Latin's monopoly on holiness. And in the ruins of their castles, you can still find the Cathar crosses, not the traditional crucifix, but intricate designs resembling the cosmos, scratched into stones by hands that believed to the end in a light beyond the flames. Hidden in the rugged mountains of Lebanon and Syria lies a faith so secretive that even most of its own followers don't know its deepest teachings, the Druze. Emerging in the 11th century as an offshoot of Ismaili Islam, this esoteric sect carries beliefs so closely guarded that outsiders have spent centuries guessing at their contents. Their holy book, the Rasail al-Hikmah, Epistles of Wisdom, isn't just restricted, it's physically inaccessible to all but the Occult, the initiated few who have proven themselves worthy after years of scrutiny. Even more intriguing, their conviction that souls transmigrate not randomly, but in a deliberate cycle where the devout might return as future descendants within their own family lines. Unlike mainstream religions with public places of worship, the Druze Kolwa prayer houses are unmarked, their locations known only to initiates. To enter one isn't just a matter of faith, it's a test of lineage and trust. Outsiders, even spouses of Druze who haven't undergone initiation, are forbidden from witnessing ceremonies. Those who do qualify face a layered system of revelation. Basic tenets are shared first, while the highest mysteries, including the nature of the cosmic Akal universal mind, are reserved for elders who have demonstrated absolute discretion. This secrecy isn't paranoia, it's survival. Historically persecuted by both Muslim caliphates and Christian crusaders, the Druze learned that silence was their strongest shield. Yet for all their reticence, the Druze wield outsized political influence. In Lebanon, where they make up roughly 5% of the population, they've held key government positions for decades, acting as power brokers between Sunni and Shia factions. Their leader, Walid Jumblat, is a master strategist whose family has pivoted between alliances with Syria, Israel, and Western powers, always with the community's survival in mind. This pragmatism stems from a core Druze principle, taqiyya, the Islamic concept of permissible dissimulation under threat. Where others see betrayal, the Druze see adaptability, a necessity for a people who believe their souls will return to a world they must cautiously steward. The most extraordinary twist, their reincarnation beliefs create a social contract unlike any other. Since a Druze soul can only be reborn within the community, every member is considered eternally bound to the collective. This fuels fierce loyalty, but also strict marriage laws. Interfaith unions are forbidden not out of bigotry, but because a soul born outside the faith would be lost forever. Modern DNA testing has even been used in custody cases to prove Druze lineage, blending ancient mysticism with 21st century science. Walking through a Druze village today, you'd notice nothing unusual, just hospitable families and well-kept homes. But beneath that unassuming surface hums a centuries-old machine of secrecy, where the butcher might be a revered sage, and the teenager bagging groceries could be carrying the soul of a medieval warrior. Their greatest trick, making the extraordinary look ordinary, ensuring their mysteries endure not in hidden temples but in plain sight. Among the many secret societies that blurred the lines between mysticism and scandal, few have fascinated and disturbed outsiders quite like the Ordo Templi Orientis or Otto. Originally founded in Germany around the turn of the 20th century as an offshoot of Masonic and Rosicrucian traditions, the order might have faded into obscurity if not for one man, Aleister Crowley, the self-proclaimed Great Beast whose takeover transformed the OTO into a vessel for his most radical ideas. At its core, the OTO became a laboratory for what Crowley termed sex magic, a practice that fused ancient rituals with a startlingly modern embrace of physical desire as a tool for spiritual awakening. The pivot point came in 1904 when Crowley claimed to have channeled the Book of the Law in Cairo, a text he said was dictated to him by a disembodied entity named Awas. Its central dictate, "Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law," became the OTO's guiding principle, but this wasn't a license for hedonism, at least not in Crowley's eyes. He saw sexual energy as the most potent force in the universe, a literal alchemy that could reshape reality if properly harnessed. Initiates underwent rituals where intimate acts were performed not for pleasure, but as sacred ceremonies, often accompanied by chanting, sigil carving, and meticulous timing based on astrological alignments. One surviving manual describes a rite where participants anointed their bodies with oils traced in sacred geometry, believing the act could manifest specific outcomes in the material world, anything from financial windfalls to political influence. By the 1920s, the OTO had become a magnet for avant-garde artists and rebellious intellectuals. The film director Kenneth Anger, a later disciple, famously documented the order's rituals in his underground films, blending homoerotic imagery with occult symbolism. But the OTO's notoriety also attracted darker attention. Rumors swirled of ceremonies involving animal sacrifice and psychoactive substances, though concrete evidence remained scarce. Crowley himself fueled the mystique, publishing cryptic diaries that hinted at rituals so potent they bordered on dangerous. Modern iterations of the OTO still exist, though they've distanced themselves from Crowley's most extreme practices. Some chapters focus on philosophical study, while others retain the erotic rituals, albeit with strict consent protocols. Celebrities like Led Zeppelin's Jimmy Page and martial artist Bruce Lee dabbled in OTO-affiliated teachings, though it's unclear how deeply they were initiated. The order's real legacy, however, lies in its challenge to societal taboos. Long before the sexual revolution, Crowley was arguing that spirituality and desire weren't opposites but two sides of the same coin. Whether that coin was sacred or cursed depends on who you ask. What's undeniable is that the OTO forced the world to confront a question as old as religion itself. If the divine is everywhere, why should the body be left out of the equation? While the Civil War tore America apart above ground, beneath the surface literally, a clandestine network of Southern sympathizers was digging tunnels, burying caches of gold, and plotting an empire that would stretch from Havana to Mexico City. The Knights of the Golden Circle weren't just another Confederate faction. They envisioned a slave-holding superstate, a golden circle of plantations and ports where the peculiar institution could thrive forever. Their initiation rites involved blindfolded recruits swearing oaths over a human skull, their maps marked not with battle lines but with XS, where treasure lay buried, riches meant to fund a second war if the first was lost. Founded in 1854 by Virginia-born adventurer George W. L. Bickley, the Knights exploited pre-war tensions with a blend of paramilitary discipline and Masonic secrecy. Their ranks included senators, judges, and future Confederate generals, all united by a chilling goal: annexing Mexico and the Caribbean to create a vast buffer against abolitionist infection. Bickley's manifesto declared the tropics natural slave territories, their fertile soil destined for servile cultivation, but their most audacious plan: a raid to seize silver mines in northern Mexico, using the loot to bankroll a private army. When that failed, they pivoted to guerrilla tactics, smuggling weapons in piano crates, sabotaging Union railroads, and allegedly plotting to kidnap Lincoln months before Booth's bullet found him. The Knights' treasure maps have fueled legend for a century and a half. Eyewitness accounts describe iron strongboxes crammed with gold coins, buried near landmarks like the lightning-struck oak or the waterfall that flows backward. In 1863, Union troops seized a coded letter in Tennessee, hinting at stashes meant to resurrect our cause in darker days. Modern hunters still scour backroads with metal detectors, chasing whispers of caches hidden beneath church altars or inside hollowed-out millstones. The most persistent myth, that a fortune lies beneath the stone foundations of the old Bickley family homestead in Virginia, enough gold to finance a modern secessionist movement. But their darkest legacy might be their ties to Lincoln's assassination. While Booth wasn't an official knight, multiple conspirators, including John Surratt and Dr. Samuel Mudd, had documented connections to the group. A recovered ledger lists payments to theatrical agents in the weeks before Ford's Theater, and some historians argue the Knights provided logistical support, viewing Lincoln's death as the spark for their postponed rebellion. After the war, federal agents uncovered tunnels beneath southern cities lined with crates of rifles stamped with the Circle's insignia, a silent promise that surrender at Appomattox hadn't ended their fight. What's left today? A handful of rusted lockboxes in museum cases, cryptic diary entries, and the gnawing sense that some of those treasure maps might still hold truth. In 2017, a farmer in Alabama unearthed a Confederate uniform button with the Golden Circle's emblem, a stark reminder that relics of unfinished revolutions never truly decompose. They just wait, buried like the Knights' gold, for someone to dig them up. In the fevered imagination of Nazi Germany, where pseudoscience and myth blurred into state policy, one organization stood out for its bizarre blend of academic veneer and occult obsession: the Ononub, or Ancestral Heritage Society. Founded in 1935 by Heinrich Himmler himself, this SS-affiliated institute wasn't just another propaganda arm. It was a full-blown intellectual scavenger hunt, scouring the globe for artifacts, texts, and even living proof that the Aryan race descended from celestial supermen. Their expeditions read like rejected Indiana Jones scripts: archaeologists in SS uniforms digging up Viking graves, linguists analyzing Sanskrit for Proto-Aryan roots, and most famously, a team sent to Tibet in 1938 to measure skulls and photograph monks, convinced the Himalayas held the key to their twisted racial ideology. The Tibet expedition epitomized the Ononub's delusional grandeur. Led by Ernst Scheffer, a zoologist turned SS officer, the team trekked through remote monasteries under the pretense of scientific study, but their real goal was far darker. They documented prayer wheels and mandalas not out of respect, but because they believed Buddhist cosmology might preserve fragments of an ancient Aryan religion. Scheffer's men meticulously recorded Tibetan facial features, comparing them to Nordic profiles, while secretly hoping to find a hidden valley of pure, blonde-haired tribesmen, a fantasy straight out of Nazi mythology. The expedition even returned with a set of ancient Tibetan medical texts, which Himmler reportedly kept in his private library as evidence of Aryan biological superiority. Yet the Ononub's most insidious work happened in European labs and libraries. Under the guise of scholarship, they plundered occupied countries for cultural treasures, shipping thousands of artifacts back to Germany for study. In Poland, they ransacked Slavic burial sites, searching for evidence to justify their claim that Germanic tribes had always owned the land. In France, they seized medieval manuscripts, hoping to trace a direct line between Charlemagne and Hitler. Even the famous Bayeux Tapestry was targeted, as Himmler's researchers sought to reinterpret the Norman conquest as a racial struggle. The Institute's legacy is a cautionary tale about how easily academia can be weaponized. Many Ononub members held real doctorates from prestigious universities, lending credibility to their outrageous claims. Their publications cited obscure sources and included complex diagrams, creating a facade of rigor that convinced even skeptics. This wasn't just crackpot history, it was history distorted through the lens of institutional authority, proving that when scholarship serves ideology, even the most absurd lies can wear the mask of truth. By the war's end, the Ononub's files were scattered, their leaders dead or fleeing justice, but their shadow lingers. Modern white supremacist groups still cite their research, and conspiracy theorists peddle myths about Nazi scientists escaping to hidden bases with stolen relics. The real horror, though, isn't in these fantasies, it's in recognizing how easily the quest for knowledge can be perverted into a tool of oppression. The Onanab didn't just hunt for artifacts, they rewrote history to fit a nightmare, reminding us that the past is always contested ground, and those who control its narrative hold terrifying power. From the dog-worshipping absurdity of the Order of the Pug to the apocalyptic visions of the Thule Society, we've uncovered groups that reshaped empires, sparked revolutions, and weaponized everything from silk scarves to sacred geometry. The Hashashin proved a single knife could destabilize kingdoms, while the Carbonari smuggled rebellion in hollowed-out Bibles. And who could forget the Ogboni, whose bronze Eden staffs were said to scream when touched by liars? These societies thrived in the space between myth and reality, where symbols held more power than swords. But why does secrecy captivate us so deeply? Perhaps because it mirrors our own lives. We all wear masks, keep private thoughts, and wonder what others hide behind closed doors. Secret societies magnify this universal tension, turning whispers into world-shaping forces. They remind us that history isn't just the story of laws and battles, but of hidden handshakes, buried treasures, and ideas too dangerous to speak aloud. Now imagine future historians sifting through our digital age. What clandestine networks might they uncover? Silicon Valley's data brokers, anonymous hacker collectives, or even the algorithmic cults shaping our desires? Could these be the modern heirs to the Illuminati's ambition or the Carbonari subterfuge? The most powerful secrets aren't always locked in vaults. Sometimes they're hidden in lines of code or the fine print of terms we never read. If peeling back these layers of history thrilled you, don't stop here. Tap that subscribe button and ring the bell. We're always digging up forgotten stories, and the next revelation might be just a click away. After all, the greatest secret of all is how much history remains untold. Who knows, the next shadowy brotherhood we expose could be hiding in your own backyard.